Family, listen close. They say the land remembers. The soil of this continent holds more than bones and bedrock. It holds prayers that curdled into pleas. It holds madness given brick and mortar. It holds a loneliness so profound, it learned to mimic love just to lure the living inside. True evil does not haunt a place. It becomes the place. The chill in the radiator, steam. The wrong angle in a hallway that wasn't drawn that way. It doesn't want to scare you away. It wants you to stay. It wants to set a place for you at its table and teach you, slowly, that you are the meal. This is not a story about a ghost. It is a story about an invitation. A story about a good man who answered a cry for help and walked into a throat disguised as a sanctuary. This is the Dread Codex. Our story begins with a letter delivered in the dead of winter. My name is Samuel Thibodeaux. I believe in mercy as a verb. I believe in the war between light and shadow as a daily reality, fought in the space between heartbeats. But the winter of 2019, that was not a battle. That was a digestion. A slow, meticulous consumption of the soul. It began with an envelope, paper thick and yellowed, smelling of camphor and dried roses. The return address was clear. Boreal Asylum for the mentally infirm, Blackwater, Massachusetts. The letter was from Eliam Ward. His handwriting was a frantic scrawl bleeding through the page. Reverend Thibodeaux. My sister, Hannah. She is a nurse at Boreal Asylum. Her last letter, it was not her hand that wrote it. The words were hers, but the shape of them was wrong. Like something was holding her fingers, teaching them to lie. She wrote of the beauty of the place, the silence, the patience so peaceful. But I hear her voice in my dreams, Reverend. I hear her screaming without making a sound. The asylum was not built for healing. It was built for forgetting. And something there remembers how to forget. Please, come north. Before the snow seals us in. Before she is completely assimilated. A photograph fell from the folds. A stern gray stone edifice with too many windows, each one a blind, reflective eye. It sat on a cliffside, the forest around it black and dense, the Atlantic a churning gray plate at its feet. The very air in the photograph seemed still. Not peaceful. Holding its breath. I went north. Blackwater, Massachusetts, was less a town and more a scar in the Pine Barrens. Eliam met me at a diner that hummed with quiet despair. He slid a photocopy of Hannah's last letter across the table. The words were cheerful, but the handwriting was uniform, perfect, as if drawn by a machine. and in the margins, almost invisible, a faint pencil sketch. A series of interconnected corridors. A labyrinth. In the center, a stick figure lying down. Above it, script so tiny it looked like static. The pattern is so beautiful. I want to be part of the pattern. There's more, Eliam whispered. The asylum was built in 1890 by a man named Alistair Corinth. He believed mental illness was a spiritual crookedness. He designed Boreal not to cure the mind, but to empty it. To make it a clean, quiet room for something else to move in. Eliam's eyes were hollow. The place was abandoned in 1952. The staff walked out into a blizzard and were never seen. It reopened in the 80s. The ones who work there, they don't last. Or they stay forever. That evening, I stood before Boreal Asylum. The cold here didn't bite, it pressed. A solid, silent weight. The building loomed, its Gothic arches like stone ribs. The main door opened before I could knock. A man stood there, dressed in an immaculate orderly's uniform. His face was long, pale, deeply calm. His smile didn't touch his eyes. "Reverend Thibodeaux," he said softly. "I am Drive. Silas. Hannah is eager to see you." He led me inside. The silence was immediate, absolute. It wasn't an absence of sound, it was a substance. It filled the grand foyer, a vaulted space of checkered marble and dark wood. No hum of electricity, no rustle of movement. Just the slow, heavy tread of Dr. Silas's shoes and the frantic drum of my own heart. The air smelled of lemon polish, lye soap, and underneath, something sweet and cloying, like honeysuckle and decay. "We practice immersive quietude here, Drive," Silas said, his voice a ripple in the stillness. "The mind, when agitated, is like a troubled pool. We allow it to become still. Clarity emerges from silence. Peace emerges from emptiness." We passed doors with grated windows. I glanced inside one. A woman sat in a chair facing the wall, utterly motionless, not resting, suspended. Another room. A man stood by his bed, head tilted, listening to something I could not hear. They weren't catatonic. They were waiting. "Doctor." Silas opened a final door. Hannah sat in a high-backed chair by an empty fireplace. She wore a simple gray dress. Her hands folded in her lap. Her eyes muted, as if dust had settled over her soul. "Hannah?" She turned. A smile bloomed, slow, like she was remembering how to form it. "Samuel, you came. Isn't it peaceful here? Your brother is worried. He wants you home. Home? The word seemed to confuse her. But I am home. The noise is gone. The fear is gone. Doctor, Corinth helps us. He shows us the beautiful pattern. My blood went cold. Hannah, drive. Corinth has been dead for nearly a century. Her smile widened. Silly. He's in the walls. He's in the quiet. He says you have a noisy soul, Samuel. A bright, clattering soul. He wonders what it would sound like when it stops. From the hallway behind me. A new sound in the perfect silence. Shush, shush, shush. Stiff fabric brushing against a wall. Something pacing. Slowly. Patiently. Just out of sight. Hannah's eyes flickered to the door. For a fraction of a second, the placid mask cracked. Raw animal terror flashed in her eyes. Her lips formed a silent, desperate word. Run. Then the mask resettled. The evening meditation is beginning, she said softly. You should go. Doctor. Silas escorted me back through the silent corridors. The pacing sound followed, always one corridor over, keeping perfect time with our steps. He seemed not to hear it. At the great oak door, he turned to me. His winter-lake eyes held mine. The work we do here is delicate, Reverend. It is a process of unmaking. The self is a fortress of pain. We are gently dismantling it, brick by brick. He leaned in, his voice dropping to a whisper. The pattern does not like to be disrupted. The door shut behind me. The sound was muffled. Final. Like a coffin lid closing. I went to the town's tiny church street, Dimphnes. Kneeling before the altar, I lit a candle blessed at the Easter Vigil. The flame burned straight up, a narrow, desperate blade of light. And then a scent. Cherry pipe tobacco. Sun-warmed cypress. A smell from the deep south, impossibly here in this northern desolation. Papa Remy's presence filled the space beside me. Not as a form, but as a profound, ancient solidity. Samuel, his voice was the sound of roots moving deep in the earth. You have walked into a mind that is not a mind. A place that thinks. The asylum? Not the building. The idea of it. Alistair Corinth built a template, a geometric prayer for silence. He prayed to something that hates the noise of human thought. And his prayer was answered. Papa Remy's voice grew grave. The thing that came, it is an antithesis. The stillness after the scream. The empty page. It has been feeding on the forgotten for over a century. digesting their memories, their identities, turning them into quiet, grateful parts of itself. Hannah is halfway digested. Herself is in a quiet room inside that thing's hollow mind. To save her, you must make her remember the noise. You must make the place remember the noise it hates. He told me what I must do. Boreal was built on a silencing sigil made of brick and mortar. 3 keystones. The clock tower, the measuring of silent time. The central furnace, the false warmth. The doctor's study, the intellect that invited it in. At each, I had to break the silence. Perform the noisiest, most chaotic, most human act of faith I could muster. It will try to quiet you, Samuel, Papa Remy warned, his presence already fading. It will offer you peace, the beauty of emptiness. You must cling to your noise, your doubt, your fear, your love. These are your weapons. The silent thing has no defense against a soul that refuses to be still. Midnight. Eliam drove his pickup to the asylum's gate. He leaned on the horn, shouted his sister's name into the void. A police whistle shrieked through the frozen air. As lights flickered on in the lower windows, I slipped inside through a service entrance. The basement was a cavern of dead machines and sour damp. The silence here was a physical pressure on my eardrums. Then Eliam's horn was cut off. Abruptly, as if a switch had been thrown. The new silence was deafening. First keystone, the furnace room. A cathedral of iron. A cold, dead boiler. I stood in the center, took a shaking breath, and began. I did not pray quietly. I shouted the litany of the saints. My voice echoed raw and discordant off the iron. I stomped. I slammed my fist against a pipe. I was a riot in the heart of the quiet. The silence fought back. It became a sucking vacuum, trying to pull sound from my lungs. The temperature dropped so fast my tears froze. From the coal chute, a shape poured out. Not a shape of matter, but of absence. A man-shaped void in the darkness, smoother than black glass. It reached for me. I shouted louder. Through one of Papa Remy's river stones. It passed through the void and struck the boiler with a clang like a thunderclap. The figure rippled, distorted, unraveled into the dark with a sigh of infinite regret. One down. Second keystone, the clock tower. I passed through staff quarters. Doors open. In each room, an orderly or nurse stood at rigid attention, facing the door. They did not move. They did not blink. They just stared with calm, empty eyes. A silent, living surveillance system. The tower stairs were narrow, iron spiral. The great clock was frozen at 3:07. The time the original staff abandoned the asylum. Here, the silence was a taut string, vibrating with potential. I anointed the gears with holy oil. And then I sang. Not a hymn, a ragged, off-key, loud rendition of When the Saints Go Marching In. A song of joy, chaos, life. I beat the rhythm on the brass casing with the flat of my hand. The tower reacted. The stones groaned. The frozen hands twitched, then spun backwards, faster and faster, with a grinding screech of protesting metal. Time itself screaming in protest. From the shadows, the thing manifested again. This time wearing drive. Silas's form, but his features were melting. Wax held to a flame. His mouth opened. No sound came out. But the words formed in my mind, cold and smooth as river stones. Cease this noise. Embrace the peace. Your struggle is the last, fading spasm of a dying animal. Be still. Be empty. Be loved. The offer was palpable. A wave of sublime calm tried to wash over me. The urge to lay down my voice, my fear, myself. It was overpoweringly sweet. I saw a vision, myself in a sunlit room. All pain gone, all memory quiet. I clung to the image of Hannah's terrified face. The words she'd mouthed run. I opened my mouth and roared. A wordless guttural cry of all my faith, all my fear, all my love for the noisy, messy, painful miracle of being alive. The Silas thing flinched. Its form blurred. The stones shuddered. A crack raced up the wall. 2 down. Final keystone, the doctor's study. The east wing was decayed. Plaster crumbled. Floorboards sagged. The silence here was older, drier, like that of a tomb. The study door was locked. I kicked it. Wood splintered with a sound like a gunshot. The room was a museum of madness. Books in Latin and Greek. Diagrams of the brain, beside geometric designs that made my eyes ache. And in the center, in a high-backed leather chair, the final keystone. It was Hannah. But not the Hannah from the room. This was a concentration of her. Transparent, ghostly, curled in a fetal position. Threads of silvery light connected her to the walls, the floor, the ceiling. She was the central node in the asylum's pattern, being unwoven. Hannah. Her spectral form stirred. Her eyes were clear, full of bottomless terror. Samuel? It hurts, it's so quiet, it's pulling me apart. I rushed to her. Didn't know how to touch her. So I did the only thing I could. I began the rite of exorcism. But I didn't chant it. I pleaded it, wept it, shouted it. I poured every memory Eliam had given me into the words. Her laugh, her love of wildflowers, the wounded crow she saved. I was reconstructing her with noise and memory. The room reacted violently. Geometric designs on the walls bled a dark, tarry substance. Books trembled. The threads holding Hannah glowed with a fierce, cold light. Tightening. And then it arrived. It did not enter. The room became it. Walls lost solidity, shifting gray silent membrane. Ceiling descended like a lowering pallet. The thing that called itself Corinth was not a creature in the asylum. The asylum was its body. And we were in its stomach. A voice spoke from everywhere and nowhere. Made of settled dust and forgotten names. You are a discordant note. A flaw in the pattern. But a pattern can incorporate a flaw. It can surround it. Quiet it. Digest it. Pressure. Immense. My eardrums popped. My thoughts began to slow, smooth out, like stones worn by a relentless river. A profound, welcoming numbness. It would be so easy. At my feet, Hannah's form flickered. She looked at me. And with a final, titanic effort of will, she did something the silent thing could not comprehend. She screamed. Not terror. Rage. A raw, human, messy, glorious scream of defiance. The sound of a soul refusing to be erased. That scream shattered the last of the holding pattern. I raised my final river stone, now burning, blistering my palm. Slammed it down onto the geometric design etched into the floor. In the name of the noisy, the chaotic, the loving, and the living God. Be broken. The world tore. Not with a bang. With a great rushing inhale. As if the asylum had been holding its breath for a century and finally gasped. Then sound. A cacophony of released noise. Forgotten sobs. Stifled laughs. The tick of a clock. The scuff of a shoe. The rustle of paper. The murmur of a prayer. The silent digestion reversed in an instant of auditory vomit. Membrane walls snapped back into brick and plaster. Hannah's form solidified. And the real Hannah Ward collapsed onto the floor. Flesh and blood. Terrified. Weeping. I grabbed her. Pulled her up. She was ice cold but alive. Her eyes her own. "Eliam," she croaked. "He's waiting." We fled through the now chaotic asylum. Alarms blared, a harsh electric wail that was music to my ears. Orderlies moved with jerky, confused motions, as if waking from a deep sleep. The perfect silence was gone, replaced by the glorious, terrifying noise of reality. We burst out into the frigid night. Eliam was there, face bloodied, standing by his still honking truck. He saw his sister. The cry that tore from him was the most beautiful psalm I have ever heard. We did not look back. But as we sped down the cliff road, I glanced in the side mirror. Boreal Asylum stood on its promontory, every window dark, except one. The top window of the clock tower. A soft, jaundiced light flickered on. And in that window, for just a moment, the silhouette of a tall man in a doctor's coat, head cocked, watching us go. And I knew. We had broken its meal, shattered its quiet. But the template remained. The pattern was still etched in stone and idea. It was silent again. And it was hungry. It would wait. Another century if it had to. For another keeper of the quiet. For another soul desperate for peace. This is the story of Hannah Ward and the Beckoner of Boreal Asylum. It is not a ghost story. It is an annihilation. The truest evil does not always rage. Sometimes it whispers. It offers you silence when the world is too loud. It offers you peace when your soul is in turmoil. It offers to take the messy, painful, glorious burden of being you away from you. For a price. You simply have to stop. Be still. And let the quiet in. So listen. If you ever find yourself in a silence so deep it feels like a physical presence. If you ever feel the urge to just let go, to be empty, because the quiet promises it will be so beautiful. Scream. Make a noise. Any noise. Clap your hands. Sing off-key. Recite a prayer at the top of your lungs. Your noise is your soul. Your chaos is your life. And there are places in this world, ancient patterns in stone and thought, that want nothing more than to help you forget the sound of your own heartbeat. If you've heard that silence yourself, you are not alone. We are listening. Send your story to contact.thedreadcodex@gmail.com. Do not let the quiet keep it. Bring it into the light. Bring it into the noise. Your truth becomes our tale. Until next time. May your house be filled with light and life and glorious, holy noise. Good night.